It's December 27th, which means it is officially Balašević Day in America. This is my yearly birthday video to my wife, who lives here in America with me, but she is of Yugoslavian descent. And every year, in order to better understand her, I review one more album by her favorite singer and artist, Žeži Balašević. So, Žeži Žeži, let's get into the 8th album of his that I have reviewed. It's been a long time. The album is called Posleratna, Druga. 3 post-war friends. Now, it's a little bit complicated. I am missing a ton of context. So, for all of you, my Yugoslavian brothers and sisters, moja sestra y moja brata, okay, you have to tell me. Because this is an album that came out in 1989 that is called a soundtrack to a book that he had not yet published. The book was published in 1991. My wife has read the book. She loves it. But I asked her, what does it have to do with the album? And she said, well, she doesn't remember the book that well. We don't even have a copy of it. Maybe I should have got that for her birthday. I will tell you, I should be holding up the album right here. I did order it on Discogs. It is the hardest to find. It is the most expensive Balašević album. It cost several $100s, and I had a hard time even finding a seller who would ship it because of the tariff laws right now in America. So it's a little bit complicated. The album is in shipment. It is on its way, but I don't have it. So here we have this title, 3 post-war friends. And if you're thinking, oh, it's a Yugoslavian thing about the war, but no, it's not about the dissolution of Yugoslavia. That would, really, it started at the death of Tito, one could argue, or it started before, one could argue, but, where the war that we're talking about starts around 91. Like, that's where we're really talking about the more direct armed conflict. So, no, this came out before then. But even then, having it be called 3 post-war friends, we could be thinking about the 3 ethnic groups that dominated Yugoslavia, the 3 religions, your Orthodox, Catholic, Muslim, you could think of that. You could think of it as post-war friends, meaning after World War II, because that's when Yugoslavia, as Balašević grew up in, that was when it was what it was. It was because of that war. So maybe it's that. So then I started thinking maybe this is another backwards-looking 1950s style album about the sort of glorious time after the war. Made me think of the movie Stand By Me, the Rob Reiner, rest in peace, directed movie written by Stephen King. He's still around. All about these 3 friends who go traveling and find a body in the woods. Even the album cover has which I would love to show up to you, has this crushing landscape with just these 3 little young boys or young men looking out from the image, So it felt like that. So there could be some kind of large context, potentially, maybe. I don't know. This whole album is entirely about one theme that's tied into the book, but I haven't read the book. So because of that, I am just taking this album song by song, a la carte. The familiar themes of music, love, a rambling life, and a fair amount of anxiety about the societal state of Yugoslavia. I am now going to pause the video and clean my glasses as an extra birthday gift to my wife, because I am a raccoon. Okay, I could live my whole life with my glasses like that and not care, but I'm going to pause the video and clean my glasses just to make my wife happy. 1 second. Much better. Now, when I spoke to my wife about this album, I talked to her about this book, and she said her theory was, and I don't even know if this is her theory, if this is a generally accepted theory, is that it's actually about a different book. The person who wrote All Quiet on the Western Front, Erich Maria Remarque, also wrote a book called 3 Comrades. And when I asked my wife what she meant by this, it seemed to make sense. She talked about its style of social realism, about the lives of 3 normal people where not much happens, to which I added, Remarque's book came out in between the First and Second World War. So in a way, this music is coming out in between the Second World War and the War of the Dissolution of Yugoslavia. So it is in the shadow of wars, both past and future. So maybe that's the theme. Certainly a lot of the social realism that is all over Balašević's music is in this album as well. Now, you'll notice I talked to my wife about this album. If you don't know, this is I think it's my 11th video about Balašević, my 8th album. Somehow, every year, My wife forgets that I do this every year. Every year it's a surprise to her. I don't know how. We live a very busy life, but she is a very attentive person. So I don't quite know how, but I decided to do it differently. Normally this is what I do. I go on YouTube Music, I find a community playlist that has the album, because most of these albums are not up on standard streaming, and I listen to the album for the first time right around December 1st, right as I'm getting ready to give final exams in my classes. I listen to it for the first time, and I don't like it that much. I listen to it the second time, I don't like it that much, and then I start liking it more and more. I take secret notes. I contact, some of my Yugoslavian friends and fans of the channel like Milosh, and I try to get all these answers, and then I release the review. This time I decided I would do something different. My birthday gift, partially, is this video. The other part is that I have turned December into Balašević month, which means the second it turned December 1st, I started listening to this album, not every day, but basically every other day, to the point where it was filling the house. And my wife is so happy. I make this video partly for her, partly for other Americans who might be married to Slavs. Please understand, they want to listen to this music. If you play a lot of music in the house, that you might think, oh, well, that's enough. It's never enough. There's never enough Balašević being played for my wife to be happy. So this has been a great month. But that means I have experienced this album in a much more organic fashion. I listened to it probably 10 to 15 times before I took a single note, before I wrote down a single lyric. I came to appreciate it. I came to have favorites. I came to have a sort of feeling for it. And then I started doing research. Now, it turns out, if you read the way people talk about this album, he considered it as a way to, quote, make up for Pantare, which is funny because I don't think this album is a lot better than Pantare. I'm not sure it's actually better. To me, it's at least as good, if not maybe not quite as good. It's maybe a little bit less foreboding, and that's what's interesting about this album, is thematically, it's a lot like Pantare. How? Pantare starts with Solitaire, which is kind of a jokey pastiche song talking about the difficulty of Yugoslavia, and ends with Requiem, which feels like a requiem for Yugoslavia. This album has a similar bookend, with starting off with sugar rap and ending with Oh Bože, Oh God. But it's not so much about the dissolution of Yugoslavia, but maybe more about the disillusionment of the people with the communist government. That's more how it feels. It feels more like the tiredness, the lack of faith that people had in post-Tito Yugoslavia really comes out really strong in the first and last songs. And that makes sense because this is the final Yugoslavian album by Žeži Balašević. Now, okay, he has an album in 1991. You could say it is, but let me tell you why I think so. This is the final album on Jugoton, which is the record label, the famous record label owned by the Yugoslavian state, right? After this, Jugoton is going to change its name to Croatia Records. You can't get much more symbolic than that. So what is this album? So it's not all that. It's not all sugar rap. It's not all O Bože. In between, there's lots of these tales of love. Again, what Balašević does, as well as any artist on planet Earth, is sing bittersweet songs about his own failings and his own joys in love. Just the nature of the bittersweet. He is just so good at expressing that. Mixed in is a familiar thematic of the inability to stay still, the desire to constantly move around, how difficult it is living the life of an artist, of a vagabond. The one thing I think this album is missing, and this is funny, but it is less wise. It feels less like he is dispensing wisdom on this album. From his very first album that I reviewed, going back to the 70s, going back, 14 years before this, I felt like he always had this kind of old soul thing going on, where from the second he was like 20, he was able to talk about humanity and existence in this really kind of far away. This album feels less like that. So maybe that's why I relate to it less. I don't know. It's also kind of a horny album. His albums are always a little horny, But this feels, I don't know, maybe a little bit uncomfortable. Now, musically, if you've been following this channel, you know I will always miss the production skills of Josip Bošek. He was replaced a few albums ago by Petrović, who, to be honest, I'm liking his style more and more as things go on, but I still miss Bošek. I think this album musically can be defined by two virtuoso, who are, guess, virtuosos? What is the plural of virtuoso? My wife will tell me. She studied Latin and stuff. She had a really good education. Yugoslavian education is really good. It doesn't matter where you are. So, you know, on one hand, it is the guitar work of Elvis Stanić, who is just an amazing guitar player, helping to make up for that Bošek-shaped hole in my heart. But it's really the violinist, Ignác Shen, who I think is the big star here. And we're going to get into him a little bit later. My biggest complaint about this album might be goofy. Well, my biggest complaint is that the album is not goofy enough. Initially, the first album I reviewed was Pub, you know, and that's a really goofy album. It's filled with all sorts of goofy songs, especially goofy pastiche. Pastiche is an imitation of a kind of art style that feels like kind of out of place and out of time, and is often kind of goofy. This album, there's a certain point when the song Saputnik comes in, where I think we need some kind of goofy song, where he sings like this, because Žeži Balašević sometimes sings old songs like this, oh, baby blue. We need a baby blue in the middle of this album, and we don't have it. It's just like heavy, 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 over. But I might be wrong on that. The more I listen to this album, the more I realize there's a chance that I'm actually thinking of it wrong. So, I'm saying the album is not goofy enough, but let's get into the album. Because he front-loaded the goofiness so hard that there was no space for goofiness left. Because the album begins with the song Sugar Rap. Oh no. That's what I said when I saw the words sugar rap. Listen, if you only know me from my Balašević videos, you might not know most of my videos are about hip-hop, culture, and rap music. That's my specialty. That's my great love. That's my great area of study. And when I saw Balašević had a song called Sugar Rap, I was getting ready for embarrassment, for cringe, for difficulty, for really, really, really not liking it. But I love it. But it's a great song. But it's a journey. How can I, because this album is actually, these videos are not for Yugoslavians. These videos are for Americans who are with Yugoslavians, who don't understand why do people like this Žeži Balašević fella so much? He just seems like a normal singer, okay? Why is he not? In defense, okay, first of all, this was just happening a lot in the 80s. Serge Gainsbourg in France had a bunch of like rap songs like this. American rock and rollers who didn't know what rap was, they would just kind of like get a drum machine and some keyboards and then talk and then call it rap. And it was really a painful time. You know, it was like rap in the way that rap was perceived of by people who had no idea of the deeper meaning of the art. Okay? A copy of a bad copy. That is how most rap made by people who are not rap artists was in the 1980s. But this deserves more nuance. This particular kind of pastiche deserves more nuance. First of all, the idea of rapping is complicated. The origin of the term rapping goes back to Black American vernacular, African American vernacular, as a way of speaking. But it also did exist in music before hip-hop was created. Before rap music, there was rapping. Take as an example the song number 6 on Isaac Hayes' Black Moses. Okay, it's called Ike's Rap. And this is like 2 years. This came out 2 years, I think, before hip hop was actually began in America. Okay? And it's just him talking. It's just him telling a story. So in that sense, Balašević has been a rapper for a long time. Not in the sense that he knows how to make beats and rhymes like a rap artist, but as somebody who uses talking in his music. One of my absolute favorite songs in the history of George Balašević's catalog is Ljubio sam sa na Salashu. I Kissed a Maiden on a Ranch. A whole rambling song where he just talks about walking around and eating cured meats. That's basically all he does. And it is a form of rapping in the pre-rap music sense. So in that sense, this song fits that category. But even if we go deeper than that, as a hip-hop scholar, I try to give definitions that might help an understanding. Okay? I try to give a definition. I have a definition for hip-hop, for rap music. Please understand, I am a guest in hip-hop. I am not a member of hip-hop culture. I am an observer. The same way I am not Yugoslavian. I am an observer of Yugoslavian art. I am an observer of hip-hop. This is my definition of hip-hop. It is two things. It is an artwork made for and by Black Americans to describe the Black American experience. That's its primary definition. Its second definition, though, is where it gets more interesting. It is a tool created by Black Americans to serve as a voice for the voiceless across the world, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, etc. That's what rap can be. So in a way, how Balašević is using rap in this song is he is not using it to make fun of rap music. The thing is not, most people who are doing imitations of rap were making fun of rap. We're making fun of the music. We're making fun of the way that it is. That's not what this is. This is just him stylistically playing around to tell a story of suffering proletariats, of talking about how proletariats suffered in communist countries, even though communism was supposed to bring in a certain amount of equality and a certain amount of brotherhood, how there was still inequality and there was still suffering and there was still some kind of superstructure of class inequality. The inequality within communism, that's what this song is about. Now it's all based on a stupid pun, a wordplay. So, in Yugoslavia, they're not doing great on imports and exports, right? But they do have sugar. But they don't get their sugar from sugar cane. They get their sugar from sugar beets. B-E-E-T-S. Beets. The red vegetables that make your poop red. Beets. They are called Šećerna repa. So like, it sounds like rap, repa, rap, repa, rap. So that's the joke. It's sugar rap. Sugar beets, sugar rap. The word for rap is essentially the word for beets. Now this goes even deeper because the whole thing is always with Balašević. Part of what makes him so powerful is how local he is, how Vojvodinian he is. Okay? How Vojvodinian is he is that he is talking about this town called Chenta, which is a town that had a sugar beet processing factory. My wife happened to have a story about this town. She used to drive to visit her grandparents, drive through Vojvodina, right? And there was always one part on the drive where they had to roll, because they didn't have air conditioning, they had to roll up their windows in their Yugo or their Trabant. I forget which. They had different cars growing up. Those are the two that I remember her telling me about. And then she's going to punch me on the shoulder when she's watching this and say, "We never had a Trabant." I thought it was a Trabant. Please correct me if I'm wrong, my wife. But anyways, they're driving there. Let's just say it's a Yugo. They're driving in their little Yugo or their Fiat, their Fiat 500, and like, roll up your windows, everybody, because it smelled so terrible. It smelled like rancid sugar farts all the way through the town. And that's the town, that's the setting. And the place where Balašević puts us is in a discotheque in the town of Shenta, a state-owned discotheque for the joy and procreation of the proletariat, that they can go to a discotheque and have a nice time in their day off. The government owns the beet factory and the government owns the discotheque. And this is the place where this worker, the narrator of this story, can just go and blow off steam and dance a little bit. When they say rap, they don't mean rap music necessarily. According to my wife, they mainly mean hip-hop dancing. That's what it's called. And that's how it worked in France as well. I mean, France is the #2 producing country of hip-hop in the world, but dance was the way that it really permeated first. That was the thing that really was able to grab people's attention, which makes sense because dance has no language. Anyway, so when we're saying rap here, mostly we're talking about dancing rap. So he was just going somewhere to dance. And who does he see at the discotheque? His manager, the upper inner circle bureaucrat, the person who was given power over others by the state, probably for some corrupt reason, not based on merit, but based on who he knew. The problem with communism has always been that it's been run by people. It might be a system that works on paper, but it is not a system that necessarily has worked well with people. So that's the problem. He's trying to relax and he sees his manager. I've seen this translated as a CEO in English. It's not a CEO because this person doesn't own the factory. This person has all the power in the factory. This person is higher up, is in management. So can you imagine being this sugar beet worker spending all day in Chenta surrounded by this stench? Having my wife and her family driving with their Yugo with the windows rolled all the way up, and that's where you live every day. And then you just try to blow off steam and you see your goddamn manager there. And he's dancing with his daughter. He says, "Oops, I mean your mistress." Very funny joke. Someone who's been mounted more times than Fruška Gora. I asked my wife, I was like, "Have you ever heard of that mountain?" She's like, "Yes." "Have you ever climbed up that mountain?" She's like, "Yeah, it's basically just a hill." And what's great, what Balašević is able to do here is, I mean, this is just an amazing story of just like class anger. The manager tries to buy him a drink, and that was what sets him off. It wasn't even that he was set off by seeing him. I mean, he was, but he then calmed down. He then tries to buy him a drink, and he says no. And then he starts yelling at him. He starts talking about how the company's going bankrupt. And then the manager says, "But we're all equals," telling the communist lie, right? Don't worry, there's a capitalist lie too, that we all have equal access and that we all we have to do is pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. There's lies everywhere. Every human system is filled with lies, okay? But that's the particular lie of communism, is we're all equal, comrade. And he says, "If we are all equal, then I will hang myself in shame among the shunke," among the hams. Shunke, which ties together to that song that I was talking about from before, the song where he talks about walking around and smelling all the cured meats. This is a really important word in Vojvodina. Matter of fact, I have to share this story. My wife has started watching YouTube videos about just of this, I think it's a Bosnian or maybe a Serbian, just some old guy curing meat. Like, she just watches that on YouTube because, like, that's so important to her culture, to her meaning. So if you are married to a Yugoslavian, encourage them to figure out how to cure meats if you are not there. Anyways, gets into a big fight, goes to jail. He blacks out. The term in Serbo-Croatian for blacking out is the film just stops. And the whole time he just keeps on saying, "Žeži Žeži," which means sort of like, let's go, let's get fired up, you know? But there's this really funny thing. There's this really funny thing where, you know, we have a 1-year-old, okay, we have a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And our 1-year-old can barely speak. But she knows how to say "Žeži Žeži," and she says it all the time now. When the song comes on, she'll be playing, and then she'll stop, and then she'll do this little dance. She'll be like, "Žeži Žeži." It is just the cutest thing ever. I also learned a very important Vojvodinian expression, "Obrati bostan," to pick watermelons. That's how you say, "Oh, you really got in trouble. Oh, you really picked a watermelon this time." It's so Slavic. As a final note on this song, the sadness is this. This man who's working at the factory, okay? This man who's working at the factory in Chenta, you know, the Yugoslavia ended up getting rid of communism, embraced free trade. So that factory in Chenta is no longer owned by the state. Who owns it now? I don't know. It was probably sold to somebody for less than it was worth. Somebody was probably given a bribe. Probably somebody else was given a bribe. Then it was probably sold maybe to the Chinese, maybe to an American company, maybe to a British company, maybe to a Russian company. But whoever it is that's working there now is probably suffering more than they suffered back then. There's probably more money being made. But instead of going to a state, it is probably going to some corrupt oligarch. I don't know anything about that. Maybe the sugar beet factory in Chenta is owned by the nicest possible people. Maybe it's worker owned. I don't know. But I do know that in post-communist countries, in much of Eastern Europe and the rest of Europe, what ends up happening is not power to the people. It ends up becoming power to different kinds of corrupt people, which is, you know, really sad. Man, what a great album. Once I could get over the fact that Balašević was doing a rap song. The next song is called Yosh, Yedna, Pesma, O Maloj Garavoj. Another song about a dark-haired girl. Now this song musically is fascinating. It is one of his most, how do I want to phrase this? Delicately made rock songs. It's really beautiful. The guitar work here by Elvis Stanic is very much imitating Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, which is easier said than done. Really great work. Just great guitar work on this. And then we get to the lyrics. My wife's suggestion for the lyrics was as follows. Sky, maybe you should skip this one. Okay, listen. I'm not going to skip it. But if you are American, be warned, this is one of the lyrics. I want a dark-skinned girl, black like my Arab brothers. Ooh, okay. In the context, as I understand it, where he is from in Vojvodina is people tend to be more fair-skinned than in other parts of Yugoslavia, or at least other parts of what is now called Serbia, because of the Hungarian and Austrian influence, the sort of more Western influences. So it's probably more of a socio-political thing about being with a woman who is less fair-haired and blonde or more of a redhead. The English translations I saw kept on using the term swarthy, which is rarely used as a compliment. So what I think this is, and again, I'm telling you, it's a horny album, but it's also like, it's hard to relate to this because he's basically saying like, blondes are too much work. Like that's kind of how it feels. It's sort of saying that like, you know, look out for blonde chicks. You need to be with a sturdy, swarthy. I am confused because the word Arab is Arapi in Arabic. I mean, in Serbo-Croatian, but then Arapi is also the name of a region of Albania. So I couldn't figure out if this was just a general thing about Arab people or about Albanians. If you have an answer to that, please let me know. I kept on asking my wife, and she kept on getting more and more frustrated that I did not understand what she was saying. So just tell me she's right. It just means Arab. But it's a great song. That is great. The opening 3 tracks. Once you learn to love sugar rap. So it's such a great song. Žeži Žeži. For the rest of my life, I will be saying to my 1-year-old, when my 1-year-old is 50 years old and I am 90, I will be saying to get ready to go, I will say Žeži Žeži. The first 3 tracks, we had the sugar rap, and then we had this rock track, and then we have, oh my God, the Vojka sa shardash nogama, the girl with shardash legs. Shardash is a kind of Hungarian folk dancing. And this is the best song on the album. This is one of Balašević's best songs he's ever written. This song, from the first time I played it, my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old literally started dancing in their seats. Just they could not stop themselves. The way that it goes from the end of track 2 into the beginning of track 3 is one of the most satisfying segues I can think of in music. And what's great about this inability of my daughters, they cannot stop themselves from dancing. Their little duška slovenska, right? They cannot stop themselves from dancing. Is that my wife tells me the story of her grandmother. The second she hears a shardash rhythm, she can't stop herself from dancing. Doesn't matter where she is, what company she's in. She hears this sound, this woman who's led a very hard life with many children and hardships and all the things you can imagine of somebody who's 90 years old, who grew up in Yugoslavia, all those things you could possibly imagine. She hears, and she cannot stop. Just like my 3-year-old and 1-year-old can't stop, and just like I can't stop. You cannot stop this song. You cannot fight this song. Hey, if you are Yugoslavian and you want to play a song for an American, how do I get into Balašević? Try this one, okay? This one is just so killer. Now, it's interesting, is that shardash, my wife told me, it's Hungarian. I looked it up. And actually, it's also played in Vojvodina. There's a Slovakian version of it. There is a Croatian version of it. There is Bulgarian shardash. It's like a kind of music that has a lot of different forms. But the term itself means like a roadside bar in like old Hungarian. So that's perfect. Like, how many Balašević songs take place in roadside bars? All of them? Now, there's some things about this song. There's some things about this song beyond the amazing intergenerational power it has to get people to dance. It's the way that it builds. So it reminds me a lot of the song Mirka, in the way that it builds up to this amazingly joyful moment. And what I want to do is I want to break down the song into 3 different parts, okay? So I have to back up a little bit because my back is hurting because I'm in the basement because it's quiet time. And the 3-year-old is upstairs. There's 3 parts to this song, okay? There's the A part, which is the verse. He's completely sleepy. He's like, he's just talking in a super just sleepy, could not care less attitude. And then there's the pre-instrumental break. I guess we could call it a chorus, which he gets more emotional and he starts singing. And it leads it up to this emotional break. And it hits so hard. The thing is, the way that shardash music is defined is that it has it gets faster as it goes, and it has this kind of emotional resonance to it. It has these kinds of rhythms, and it goes slower to faster. So it makes sense that he's so sleepy because he's building in this dynamics. Frankly, it's kind of sexual in its way that it plays with sexual restraint and release. And Balašević plays with it so well in the song because the A part, I don't want the A part. It's fine. You need the A part to build up the tension. But then you get to the B part, and he repeats the B part twice. The first time, it's just 8 measures. 8 times of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's singing, right? And he's singing, and he's singing. But the second time he does it, it's 16 bars. So that right when you have been trained by this song to get ready for the exciting instrumental break, right? Because even the C part, even the instrumental bit has 2 different parts to it. The part that's exciting, and then the part that is just, you just lose your mind and you can't stop yourself from dancing. He builds that up by doubling the pre-instrumental break. And it makes sense because the whole song, this suspense, this build-up, this sexual release, it makes sense because the whole song is about a woman, a devout young woman who's wearing a cross. I was very proud of myself for hearing the Serbo-Croatian Kristić. She's at a wedding and he's performing. He's the guitarist or the violinist or both, and about how the aunt always warned her about guys like him and how she's just staring at him like a doe. And you know, you have to imagine her as being all dressed up, but the song is saying, show me your shardash legs. Show me your legs from dancing. You might be in an oppressive patriarchal society. You might be economically disadvantaged. Your husband, your future husband might be working at the beet factory right now. But inside you, you have that need to dance. Just like Baba, and just like my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old, you've got that joy, that carnal, physical joy within you, which in this case is sexual. And beautiful lines. My wife's favorite lyric on this whole album is, my guitar is too small to hide you from the rain. Because basically this is a guy saying, like, don't fall in love with me. I'm just a musician. You have a whole life ahead of you. You go live your good life. You go be fine. You go be happy. I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to be, a musician. I can't protect you. I can't be the man you need. My guitar is too small to hide you from the rain. He needs to be selfish and for himself. And just keeps on building and building. And there's some synthesizers. It's not all folk instruments, but it's just the way that the instrumental break comes in, and how powerful it is, and just the 8 bars of just ho hey ho hey ho. And I listen to a lot of shardash music, and it all does that I've heard. And the whole album to me just revolves around the violin playing of Ignaz Shen. My wife told me, listen, I'm an old man, okay? I'm 48 years old. I repeat stories all the time. I never wanted to be like my father, who repeated stories all the time. I repeat stories all the time. My wife never repeats stories, but she has told me the story of Ignaz Shen, I think 3 times now, because it's that good of a story. He was a violinist. He came to record this song, and Balašević was like, okay, do you want to practice it and get ready? No, you just want to play it once with us before we hit record, so this is the music? Yes, I'm fine. And Balašević was like, all right, I guess we'll play it. And then first take, first try, he plays this absolutely blistering solo. He plays it completely perfectly, a complete and total professional. And I love how everything just gets stronger and stronger. Like I'm talking about that second time where he does the B part, where he does it twice as long. And he has these lyrics, which I found translated on Lyric Translate. Thank you very much, whoever's doing that. On my golden strings. Hey, fly down, you little bird, right here, my golden strings. The fire is spreading all over your eyes. Break something up and dance fast and wild. Wow, man. It's hot stuff. This is hot stuff in a sexually repressed society, which is what's being described right here. This music is basically sex between this woman who's dancing and this man who's playing violin or playing guitar. This is the closest that society will permit them to have. It's terribly romantic. It's terribly perfect. What a song. And then we get the Chalva pesma, my dad's song. This is, according to my wife, just a full-on tamburashi song with the swirling guitars and accordions. It makes sense. Tamburashi is a traditional style of music in a lot of Yugoslavia. There's a lot of great tamburashi music in Vojvodina. It builds up with this joyful and lumbering, increasing tempo. Now, I have to admit something here. I dance to the second part of this song by doing the kolo. My wife tells me this is total blasphemy, but it's her fault. You see, over the summer, we discovered there is a Serbian fest in Buffalo, New York, and we went. And my wife said, you're going to have to learn how to dance the kolo. So we went on YouTube, and I figured out how to dance the kolo, which is the traditional dance that every single person in Yugoslavia knows how to dance from the second that they're born. They come out of the womb doing the kolo. Okay? So I hear this music and I just start doing the kolo to it. But I shouldn't have. Also, my wife taught me about the kolo, but she didn't tell me. If you break into a kolo line, break into the middle. I went at the end thinking I was the last person to join, like it would be like an American dance line. That meant that I was supposed to lead. So I did the kolo for the first time in my life at a Serbian festival surrounded by actual Serbs. I jumped in the head of the line. And everyone's watching me, and I barely even know where to put my legs. Anyways. But hey, on the plus side, I do the colo with my 2 daughters to the song, and they enjoy it. The 3-year-old and the 1-year-old. And my 3 daughters, even my 18-year-old joined in. So this song's confusing to me, musically, because it seems to be a song about his father. But the way he's describing his father is the way he would describe himself in previous albums, like Odladzi Circus, the kind of rambling, wandering, romantic style figure who is unable to settle down because he has a devil following him. So was that it the whole time? Was his father? Was he singing? Was he mediating his relationship with his father on all those other albums? I love the way the microphone's kind of held far away from him. The guitar work here is amazing. All these lyrics are just about the way that he's running away from the devil. I don't drink because I enjoy it, nor because it makes me look good. I do it to get him drunk, referring to the devil under his hat. Don't ask me why at the end all the dogs bark at me. Never ask me why I wander. It's better that I don't have a hat underneath it. The devil is resting, sleeping, and whining. I blame the devil. But just the way the instrumental bits break up, the way this has that tamburashi feel, how much it makes you want to dance and relax. The thing is, it's like, and it goes all super slow, and then meanwhile, I'm sitting there doing a little colo, all right, left, right, I'm doing the colo. I'm doing it so fast, I scared my 3-year-old. And then just when you think this album could not possibly get any better than that little run, we get to D moll, D minor. My wife says this is the big song on the album, the song that everybody knows, the most famous song on the album, because of course it is, because Balašević is known for his ballads. The great thing about this song is that it's called D minor, and it's about D minor. That's what it is. This song is about D minor. So I have a guitar here, right? So a D major is actually a really happy chord. It's just a happy little chord, you hear that? But the D minor, just a small shift, makes one of the saddest sounding chords in all of human existence. So that chord has a feeling. You cannot write a happy song to that D minor. And that's the anchor of the entire song. It just kind of slips back and forth. And what's crazy is in the chorus, he actually ends up doing something less sad. He actually punctuates the sadness of the D minor by playing major chords as well. So the chorus starts, Yedna de moll, me do bie, still in the kind of minor register, kako odesh, ti u sobie. And then he still keeps it minor, goes to G minor here. Glupi de moll, uvexanza kadieto. So that's the D minor. But then in the middle of this chorus, it gets happy. It goes to an F major. Uhafti me kvesto, I ne popusta, ludjaza tisinam to ne propusta. Then goes back to the minor register. Vodi meus voi plavi castidol. And then what's crazy is for the end of the chorus, he goes back to that major, the happier, because this is happy. F, C, F, C. He ends the back half of this chorus doing Yedna de moll, me razvali neki bito prosto, tugam nazvali nieto. Then, of course, goes back to Chtaje tuga za de moll. So he's playing with the kind of major and minor, going back and forth and back with that. So that's pretty cool because when you play D minor, that's how you feel. You just feel like it's just this sadness. And it talks about, it actually incarnates D minor. You wander away sometimes and I dream alone. I admit it's not working, but I'm trying, and it always comes D minor. It comes down the strings like a thief. It fills my hands with your trifles, and that's hard to deal with. Right? D minor triumphs over me. As soon as you leave, it fills the room. Stupid D minor. It always finds out when that is. So this is like the nature of his lost love. It's just this one chord, and he can't escape it. He can't, no matter how much he tries to do. Oh my God, I just realized this right now. Look at my hands. Look at how the F that he switches to is just one little move. So look, this is D minor. I'm just gonna move my ring finger. That becomes F. So like it becomes happy with just the move of one finger. Now, I'm not saying it's the ring finger because that's marriage, but that's kind of a funny idea. So what's the inspiration for the song? I thought a lot about this. I think the inspiration for the song primarily is Schubert's String Quartet number 14 in D minor. If you think about like the history of the D minor chord in music, that is one of the most famous. It's called Death and the Maiden. Stylistically, it's connected. I think if you listen to this song and then you listen to Death and the Maiden by Schubert, I think that works. The other big inspiration is mentioned in the song, Ry Cooder. Okay, if you don't know Ry Cooder, he's like this American blues, jazz, folk, just a freaking genius, just a genius guy who does a lot of great soundtracks. So my theory is, he's talking about the greatest hits of Ry Cooder. My theory is he is talking in particular about the theme to the movie Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders, starring Natasha Kinski. If you don't know, he has a whole song about Natasha Kinski. So I think that all kind of goes in there. That song has this repeated melody that goes from F down to E and then F down to D. So it's like... but it's played on a slide guitar. So it's like... And Ry Cooder himself plays in what is called open D tuning. So I think it's an intentional reference. I think he's tying together that kind of mournfulness of Paris, Texas. My gift to you, my dear wife, is we got to finish watching Paris, Texas. We started watching that like 7 years ago, and then we stopped halfway. It's like one of my favorite movies. Then when you think you're not done, we get to Kad Odem, When I'm Gone. This is a song actually about dying. What the... He's actually singing about dying. Like so many songs where Balašević could be singing about dying, he's actually talking about getting up and leaving on the road and taking the train and going out of town and joining the circus and going with the band and all that stuff. Here he's just talking about dying. So maybe here's the wisdom here. I asked my wife if this was the song that people played after he died, but it wasn't, which is interesting because he's talking about what to do. Got these pianos and cymbal swells, nice little rising melody, I think played on a flute. Elvis Stanic again steals the show here with a blistering, very memorable guitar solo that manages to be like shredding, but also memorable. Ends with this little flourish. It sounds like an angel, and it's all about dying. Hey, now I need you strong. I know it's easiest to sob, but it's just our Lord playing the sonata of the fall. I had a dream of a door in solid gold. I'm afraid to pass through, but I must go. This is like, again, tying into other songs that I like quite a bit from the French canon. Testament by Georges Brassens, who I think is a very similar figure to Balašević, is a song all about his death and what will happen after his death and how people should think of him. Le Moribond by Jacques Brel, another very Balaševićian figure. He's Belgian, not French, but it's another song like what's going to happen after I die. Do not keep the ashes for very long. Those days, once I'm gone, I must be now. So it's about getting over his death and about moving away. Now, this is the point where I need some fun pastiche. Now, listen, maybe the girl with the shardash legs, that is pastiche of shardash music. So I'm used to the bluesy pastiche of other albums, of songs like Smoothly Blues, or his like oldie-timey pre-war pop songs like Baby Blue. Maybe I'm thinking in an American mindset because then he has the Tamburashi song after the shardash song. So maybe it's just that I'm missing the kind of pastiche that he's doing. But we need some fun, goofy Balašević here. We just had D-moll, followed by Kad Odem, just two gigantic arrows straight through the heart. And then we get Saputnik with its fretless bass and gentle electric piano, just kind of cheesy, soft rock that's also very sad, even though it grows with these nice guitar notes in the second verse. And it's got these great bittersweet lyrics, but I found myself wanting something goofy. Maybe he could have started off the album with the swarthy girl and then put sugar rap right here. I don't know. Now, the other problem is I saw the title and I just wrote my own story for what the song was about. I didn't read Saputnik. I read Sputnik, like Sputnik, like the Russian satellite. So in my mind, this whole album, when I had no idea of the lyrics, I had just heard the album 4 or 5 times, but had no idea of the lyrics. In my mind, with the album cover and the fact it's called Three Post-War Friends, it was a story about a Croat, a Serb, and a Bosniak who were friends somewhere in Vojvodina in the 1950s, who worked somewhere together, who were like young men or maybe teenagers, who were living kind of this fun life even though they were in a financially precarious place. And in the middle of this, in 1957, Sputnik starts the space race. And so in my mind, this whole song was going to be about their reactions to Sputnik. This had nothing to do with it, but that's just what I pictured. It's a bummer he's not alive today, because I would like to tell him that is my idea. I think he would say, that would be a good song, Sky. But no, it's a more traditional Balašević style song. It's maybe the best lyrics on the album. I'm sorry to those of you who love D-moll, but the lyrics here are amazing. It's about him going home to look for an ex who has moved on, and about his fellow traveler, because that's what Saputnik means, not Sputnik. Gloopy. Saputnik, which is a traveling companion, which he refers to as a small silver glow, which I assume means the moon. And these lyrics of him basically going home for some kind of holiday or festival and having to cross a border. I don't know where this border would be. We're still in Yugoslavia, but I don't know. Maybe it's the border like from Italy into Croatia. I don't know. I was on the border after midnight. Darkness is my color and there's no help. The customs officer, still a boy, nodded his head, official and stiff, and just stamped. Everything's fine, good night, and have a safe journey. This verse also made me laugh. If you know anything about me, you know that I don't know very much Serbo-Croatian, but I do know Agde Pečat. Radnici grada Niš nemaju pečat. Radnici grada Niš nemaju prava, right? Like I know that whole sketch. I think pečat is very funny. I think it's a funny word because in a communist country especially, there's so much bureaucracy that there has to be pečat everywhere. And then if you don't know the story, when I took my family, or when I went with my family to Yugoslavia, when we crossed over from Serbia into Bosnia, there was a customs officer. It was at night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was just like this. The kids were asleep in the back of the car. I was driving next to my wife, right? I handed over the passports. He handed them back. And as I left, I said, Laku noć. And it turns out that's like saying, Betty bye. Good night, honey. Like, I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to say Laku noć. But here's Balašević talking to somebody at the border saying Laku noć. And, okay, multiple great guitar solos from Stanic here. The first one is another full Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits style guitar. Where is my freckled one? She's been avoiding me for a long time. So maybe this is tying into how he needs a swarthy one, because the freckled one, who presumably has lighter skin, has left him later on in the album. She never called me back. The magic has stopped, disappeared somewhere like butterflies before rain. Where's my Peggy Sue? She's not here. They said they moved, don't call. Only the figure remains, a small, faithful fellow traveler. So what's interesting about this is a couple things. Remember my whole Sputnik theory about 1957 and Sputnik? Do you know what else came out in 1957? A little song called Peggy Sue. Do you know the song Peggy Sue by Buddy Holly? You know Buddy Holly, the same person who was the first song on the Stand By Me soundtrack? A different song, but still. Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue. If you knew Peggy Sue, then you know why I feel blue without my Peggy Sue. Well, I love you, gal. I love you, Peggy Sue. That also came out in 1957. It all fits. Like the fact that the fact that Yugoslavia is often kind of stuck in between sort of the East and West, and stuck between Russia with its Sputnik and its technological advances and its communism, even though, of course, it resisted Stalin and was a part of the non-aligned movement, but still, that kind of pull. And then it's more sort of American-facing cultural importance of Peggy Sue. 1957 was the year of Peggy Sue and Sputnik. So what am I supposed to do? But I think this is important because Peggy Sue, I asked my wife if she knew the song. She didn't. So it might not be a very popular song. Obviously he does, because Peggy Sue is like one of the biggest hits of Buddy Holly. So it's this fascinating thing to be like, where's my Peggy Sue? There's no one named Peggy Sue in Yugoslavia. There's no Peggy Sue Petrovic, okay? There's no Peggy Sue Stojanovic, all right? That doesn't exist. So, it's obviously, taking us out of this place. It's bizarre. Just by throwing in Peggy Sue, he anchors it in the late 50s. He anchors us in this weird nostalgic place where he often is, because nostalgia is also the place of bittersweetness, because nostalgia is longing for a time that is past, and certain parts of that time that passed are things that you miss, and certain things are happy that are gone. It's just 50s reference all over the place. So, what a song, right? Because it's he's trying to get back to, he's reluctantly going back home, and it's the place of this woman who he just left, and who stopped calling him back, and who is the source of his pain. And if you knew Peggy Sue, then you'd know why he feels blue without Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal. Yes, I love you, Peggy Sue. Buddy Holly's great, by the way. Next song is called Tugboat. Now, this is basically actually almost pastiche now. So what am I even saying here? It's almost a 50s style guitar waltz pastiche with these arpeggiated chords and a kind of resolving box-like pattern. Another great big guitar solo. But this has, okay, I'm in a fight with my wife. Okay? Not a bad fight, a good fight. I don't think this is a very good song. I think this is a bad Balašević song. She thinks it's a great Balašević song. You tell me in the comments who is right. Okay? To me, I was lyrically disappointed because I once took a container ship across the ocean from Hamburg to Montreal. And I saw the little tugboat pulling the container ship, and that was like a transformational moment. Because Slavs and Americans both grew up with the same children's story about a little tugboat and how powerful it is. But until you've actually seen it work, it's amazing. But then the whole song is just about just being chill, just being relaxed. Unhook the barges, aim in the morning, and let the boat slide. Americans found a code for it. In English, he says, take it easy. My beautiful doll, a ripe peach splits the sky. And then my wife says, it's saying how little of what we worry about actually matters, but in sort of a comforting way. So now I'm starting to like the song more. Maybe I disagree with me. Maybe it is a great song. The album ends with Oh Bože, Oh God. Now this is the goofy song I needed earlier. It is kind of a goofy song. kind of old-timey music. The thing is, he doesn't do the thing with his voice. Oh, bonjour blue. He doesn't do that, right? But the whole song kind of has this kind of stop and start kind of fun section with kind of a jazzy B section. It's a little more rocking with jazzy piano and the bass and even some pedal steel. And it ends with na 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 na. And once again, my sweet 1-year-old loves this album. When you're older, my sweet 1-year-old. If you happen to watch these videos that I made for your mom, please know that when you were 1 year old, when we turned on this album, you'd go Žeži Žeži and do your weird little dance. When Shardash legs came on, Shardash nogoma, you'd just start dancing. And then this song came on. At the end, you just start going na 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 along with it. And this is maybe the saddest song on the album because it's the pain of someone living through just the end of Yugoslavia. I turn on the radio, Upalim Radio, to hear what the esteemed comrades are up to. Which miserable sods of which session were deposed tonight. I turn off the radio, Ugasim Radio. How just disillusioned and sad he is. They were, at times, quite transparent in communist Yugoslavia, and you could turn on the TV or you could turn on the radio and hear the proceedings of the different committees, and it's just this kind of feeling of just no one cares, nothing's working, everything is better somewhere else. He makes reference to Hitler's and Stalin's propagandists. He talks about browsing the papers. So starts off with the radio, then goes to the papers. What promises are being made, fog and snow squall. There's a lot of nature in this album. There's a lot of like fog. Maybe that's why oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, 1 second. We needed Remorker before this song because Remorker is the like, hey, just live your life, do your best. It's just things are tough, but just do your best. Just take it easy if you can. And in that song, the lyrics, the atmosphere is quite clear and nice. And here it's the fog and snow squall. This is the sad political reality that he chooses to end us with. In his final song on Yugoton Records, the final song, he's talking to God like God doesn't know what God's doing. Oh God, I guess you know what you're doing. You've got a better overview there, Chief. But from this obtuse angle, it looks pretty tight. Oh, not to whine for you to bail us out, but something went wrong somewhere. We need a dude with experience. That was the translation I found, and I choose to think it is perfect. He even then talks about watching TV. No, he asks why for am I not an alien from SR Slovenia? I genuinely feel like seceding. So this is just where things are getting too crazy here, okay? Things are just getting too crazy here, all right? So this album was released December 16th, 1989, okay? He is talking about wanting to secede from Yugoslavia like Slovenia. Slovenia would secede, famously, from Yugoslavia 1 year and 1 week later. So he is talking about the current state of Slovenians wanting to secede and him wanting to secede, even though he knows as a Serb there's no real way to secede from Yugoslavia because Serbs had most of the control over the power in Yugoslavia anyways, which is the reason other people want to secede. Even though the Serbs themselves many Serbs did not feel that they had enough power considering the population disparity between the different parts. It's a very complicated question. I'm not going to answer the Yugoslavian dissolution. I'm just going to say it's pretty wild that he's doing this. And he even does a little linguistic thing here where he uses the term kaj instead of što, because that's the way they would talk in Slovenia. Apparently, according to my wife, Balašević had a thing for Slovenia. I don't know. Never been. Radio, newspaper, and then, geez, I'm sorry. A bird just hit the window. It's fine. Do you want to see the birds? So there's some, I got some mourning doves. I got some sparrows. Anyways. Sorry. Scared me. Radio, newspaper, TV. In the TV news, the East Germans knocked down the wall. No joke. Don't blow it up. Disassemble it. We need it all here. This album was released December 16th, 1989. A month and... No. Yes. A month and a week after the Berlin Wall fell. The Berlin Wall fell on November 9th. The album was released on December 16th. So he must have been recording this right up until the album was released. And he's talking about, like, he's literally talking. So on the last album, Pantare, which is very connected to this album, starts off with Solitaire, which talks about Yugoslavia as being like a high-rise, and you get the sense that it might be crumbling. Here he is talking about the East Germans knocking down the wall and how they should take the wall that separated East and West Germany and put it in Yugoslavia to keep Yugoslavia okay. What a bleak political perspective he has here. I'll sell off everything except for the gramophone. The rest I can say goodbye. La, 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 la. And then there's this bit where he says, surprise. What's the surprise, George? What, are you just using English? Are you talking... Are you predicting the future? What are you saying surprise for? So it ends up being this really sad bookend, where we can imagine this being from the perspective maybe even of that factory worker who saw his boss at the disco. You know? This disillusionment with Yugoslavia, with Tito's Yugoslavia, the dream of equality and prosperity for everybody becoming this reality, needing a wall, just being totally dissociated, totally disillusioned, disenfranchised, disenchanted. So tune in next year as I get the Marimya, the album recorded in 1991. I really wish that I had the album here, because that's my birthday gift to her every year, is I get her the Balašević album, and this one cost a lot of money. So just, dear, it's on its way. I did try to buy it. I did find one seller from Vojvodina, but they couldn't send because of customs, so I bought it from someone in Croatia instead. So there you go. I hope it's a first pressing. It's a great album. I love listening to it, and I appreciate you watching, even if you're not my wife. But there's only one view I really care about. All right, until next time, Žeži Žeži.